If I ever lose you, Abigail, this place would fall apart in a week. Elliot said that to me 5 years ago, half laughing, half serious, after I single-handedly recovered our entire East Coast database that someone accidentally wiped during a system update. I didn't say anything back, just smiled, saved the files, and stayed 2 hours late to double-check every client account, because that's what I did, not once, not twice, but over and over again for 15 straight years. I wasn't hired to lead. I wasn't even hired to stay. I was the second assistant to a startup CEO in a shared office with squeaky chairs and broken coffee machines. My job description: keep things moving. So I did. I created the structure. I set up the client flow. When no one knew where the contracts were stored or how to talk to our biggest vendor, guess who figured it out? When there was no onboarding system, I built one. When we had too many clients and not enough staff, I stepped in and did both. I never made noise about it. I never had to. People just came to me when things broke, when they were stuck, when they were panicking. My desk was like the calm eye in the middle of the hurricane. The thing is, I was proud of that, not in a loud trophy-on-the-wall kind of way, but in the quiet satisfaction of watching a company stand on the systems I put in place, watching new hires succeed because I left breadcrumbs in the right places, watching Elliot raise a glass at every holiday party and say, "We'd be nowhere without Abigail." And for a long time I believed him. That's what made Monday morning so strange. He called me into his office like usual. Same tone, same warm smile. I thought maybe it was a check-in or maybe another expansion plan. Instead, he slid a folder across the desk and said, "I need your help with a transition. I want you to train someone new to take over your role." I blinked. Take over my role. He nodded like it was nothing. We're thinking long-term. New perspectives. Fresh energy. Fresh energy. I had built the engine. I didn't ask who. I didn't push back. I didn't even let my expression change. Years of being the go-to fixer teaches you how to stay unreadable. But something inside me cracked, just slightly. I nodded, stood up, and left the room like nothing happened. But as I walked back to my desk, the one I chose 15 years ago, I couldn't stop hearing that line in my head again. If I ever lose you, this place would fall apart. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if he forgot. He said that, or if he was hoping I had. I didn't go home that night. Not right away. After Elliot told me I'd be training someone new, I sat in my car in the parking lot with the engine off, hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The sun had dipped below the skyline. One by one, office lights flicked off behind the tall glass panels of the building. I helped fill with life. I'd built the engine. I kept it running through crisis after crisis. And now I was being asked to hand the keys to a stranger. Except she wasn't a stranger. The next morning, I learned exactly who I was training. Emma James Elliott's daughter. I wish I could say I was surprised, but deep down I wasn't. The way he said new voices, fresh energy, it wasn't about innovation, it was about inheritance. She showed up late to the 9 a.m. onboarding meeting, holding a smoothie and scrolling through her phone. She wore a blazer over a crop top, said vibes 3 times, and mispronounced the name of our biggest client during introductions. No apology, just a giggle and a shrug. I looked across the table and saw the HR director trying to smile politely, jaw clenched. The intern next to me shot me a glance like, "Is this real?" And I gave the smallest nod. Yes, it was. This was the person I was supposed to hand my life's work to. And the worst part, I wasn't just being phased out, I was being erased. Emma was introduced as our new future leader, and when someone asked what my role would be, Elliot chimed in quickly, "Abigail will be instrumental in ensuring a smooth transition." Transition. That word hung in the air like a guillotine. He never used the words promotion, recognition, or earned just transition, as if the past 15 years had been nothing but a warm-up for his daughter's arrival. I remembered the conversation we had 3 months ago. We were having lunch in the conference room, and Elliot leaned in and said, "We'll be expanding soon. I want you at the forefront. You've earned it." He looked me in the eye when he said that, smiled, made me believe him. And now I was sitting next to his daughter as she asked if we could just automate client relations altogether. She said it with that same breezy tone influencers use when they talk about detox teas and time freedom, as if relationships could be templated. She hadn't spent one late night negotiating with a vendor about a breach in delivery. She hadn't flown out to Boston in the middle of a snowstorm to save a failing deal. She hadn't written a single SOP, but she got the title. I got the responsibility. I tried to keep my voice steady. That week, I answered her questions, I forwarded her files, I gave her access, but I stopped explaining why things mattered because she didn't care. And maybe I realized Elliot didn't either. What hurt the most wasn't being overlooked. It was knowing that everything I'd built, everything I thought had value, was now being treated like a stepping stone in someone else's legacy. A legacy she hadn't earned, and a position that was supposed to be mine, not just because I wanted it, but because I deserved it. And now I was the final task on someone else's to-do list. She made an entrance like she thought this was her runway. Emma walked into Tuesday's strategy meeting with her sunglasses still on, a green smoothie in one hand and her phone in the other. She didn't apologize for being late, just plopped down in the seat I used to call mine, crossed her legs like she'd been doing this job for years, and started tapping her long nails on the glass table. Tap, 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 like she was bored before we even began. The room went quiet. Elliot, of course, didn't seem to notice. "All right," he said, cheerful as ever. "Abigail Wood, you walk us through the Q3 segmentation update." I stood, clicked the remote, and brought up the slides I'd spent all weekend perfecting. I explained how we group clients by behavior needs and value how these tiers help us customize our approach and retain loyalty. This wasn't just a chart. It was the result of years of trial error and real-world negotiation. And then Emma cut in. "Wait, hold up," she said, waving her hand like she was trying to swat a fly. "You seriously remember all those little categories?" I paused. The air in the room shifted. She gave a light laugh. "No offense, it just feels, I don't know, kinda old school. Like, wouldn't it be easier to just tag everyone? Priority and play it by ear?" I blinked, across the table. Brian raised an eyebrow. Clara sat up straighter. No one said a word. I took a breath, kept my tone even. These aren't just little categories. They're there, so every department speaks the same language. It keeps things clear. Emma shrugged. "Still feels complicated. I like clean systems. Minimal straightforward. Less brain clutter. Less brain clutter." That was her phrase. I finished the presentation. No one asked questions. I sat down, jaw tight, willing myself not to react. But when she leaned over and whispered something to Elliot, who nodded and chuckled, I had to look away. Later that afternoon, I passed by her office. My old corner. She'd already redecorated white shelves, gold lamp, some overpriced Zen diffuser misting lavender into the air. She'd replaced the ergonomic chair I used with something aesthetic but completely impractical. A ring light glowed beside her monitor. She was filming a video. For internal motivation, she'd said in the morning. "We need fresh energy in our team culture." I didn't stop walking. In the break room, Clara joined me near the coffee machine. She poured herself a cup and gave me a quiet look. "You hanging in there?" I nodded. "Yeah, I've seen worse." She hesitated. "It's hard watching this. You built all this. And now..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I stirred my coffee for no reason. Honestly, I'm just trying to keep my mouth shut. She gave me a soft pat on the arm and walked out. When I got back to my desk, an email from Emma was waiting. She had responded to a client complaint by copying the whole leadership team and suggesting, and I quote, "Let's just give them something simple and move on. They're not that high maintenance." The client brought in over $1 million last year. I stared at her message. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could fix it, rewrite it, save the situation. But instead, I just closed the tab. Not because it wasn't my problem, but because I finally realized something. Fixing it would only make her look better. She'd take credit for the rescue. Elliot would praise her, "Quick learning," and I'd become the footnote, so I did nothing. Sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. Let them hang themselves with the rope they begged you to hand them. Emma wanted to rename the entire system. She marched into the morning meeting and announced it like she'd just invented the wheel. "We're calling it Client Flow 2.0 from now on," she said, tapping her iPad. The old naming structure sounds dusty. No one asked why. No one dared. Elliot just nodded like she was reading from a sacred scroll. It had taken me 6 years to develop our tier-based system. Every color, every tag, every label was rooted in strategy. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. It helped us land and keep clients who paid on time, who stayed for years, who sent referrals without being asked. Now it was being wiped clean because it didn't fit her aesthetic. I sat through it all. I nodded. I even walked her through the back-end settings so she wouldn't break anything, though. That didn't last long. Later that week, I found her in the admin dashboard deleting rows of archived notes. "What are you doing?" I asked carefully. She didn't look up. These old logs are pointless. No one reads notes from 2016. I stepped closer, my voice calm. That includes VIP directives. Some of those notes have updated billing cycles and specific support flags. She rolled her eyes. "Then they should have been organized better. Honestly, half the stuff in here looks like junk, like this guy Paul T. Tier 1 flagged sensitive account." That sounds fake. She hit delete before I could stop her. Paul T. wasn't fake. He was a decade-long partner with complex invoicing needs, one legal scare and the patience of a ticking clock, and she'd just erased everything tied to him. Preferences, contacts, follow-ups, even his alternate billing structure. I stared at the screen as his name vanished, and Emma just shrugged. "Sorry." The name sounded like spam. That night I went home and didn't speak to anyone. I stood in the kitchen for half an hour without realizing the stove was on pasta, boiling over. I'd trained dozens of people in my career, juniors, interns, new department heads. I'd watched some grow into leaders. I'd also watched others crash and burn. But this was different. Emma didn't need my knowledge. She wanted my position, my space, my silence, and I was giving it to her. The following week, she held a meeting titled Streamlining Legacy Processes. She asked me to present a report that she rewrote in her tone, shorter sentences, emojis in the footnotes, hashtags like it was a social media post. I complied. I stood in front of people who used to trust me, explaining bullet points. I hadn't written in a format that made me feel like a stranger in my own skin. After the meeting, Martin from legal stopped me in the hallway. "That was new," he said, searching for the right word. I smiled faintly. "Just helping with the transition." He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "You okay?" I gave him the same lie I gave everyone. "Yeah, I'm fine," but the truth was uglier. I wasn't fine. I was eroding. Piece by piece, this place I had built was being hollowed out, repainted, and sold under a different name. and I was the one handing over the tools. Every morning I walked in and watched her erase me. Every afternoon I listened to her misinterpret things I'd once bled for, and every night I went home with my mouth shut and my chest tight. The hardest part wasn't the change. It wasn't even Emma. It was the silence that followed my exit from each room, how no one stopped her, how no one defended the old system, how even the people I trusted looked away, not out of malice, out of survival. They had families, mortgages, medical bills. I didn't blame them, but the silence hurt more than the insult I was still here, and yet somehow already gone. No one remembered to bring cake. Not that I expected a grand farewell. No balloons, no speeches, but something. A card, a thank you. A single chair pulled slightly out of line signaling someone had noticed I was leaving. There was none of that. Friday came like any other day. The sun through the high windows, the hum of printers, the quiet clatter of keyboards. My resignation had been submitted a week ago. Elliot accepted it without hesitation, without a second conversation, just a one-line reply. Thanks. Abigail Smooth. Transition is all we ever needed. Smooth transition. That's how he described 15 years of sweat and sacrifice, like I'd simply passed a file across a desk. By noon, I had finished transferring access. I removed my personal folders from the drive, cleaned out my drawer, and unplugged my charger from under the desk. I once thought I'd grow old at my office. Emma's office now was already redone. A neon sign with her initials, a fresh orchid on the shelf, and my old coffee mug sitting on her desk in plain view. She'd kept it, the blue ceramic one with the tiny chip at the rim. The same mug I used every day for 13 years. Now it sat beside her designer tablet like a trophy. I closed my laptop and stood up. Clara from Client Success was the only one who looked up. Is today your last? She asked, voice low. I nodded. She bit her lip. You deserved more than this. I didn't reply, because what could I say? That I agreed, that every second of this felt like dying in slow motion. She stood quickly, walked around the desk, and hugged me tight. They'll regret this. I squeezed her hand and whispered, Don't let her delete the legacy clients. She nodded with a tear in her eye. I already made backups. Some part of me exhaled for the first time all week when I stepped into the elevator. Emma was walking by with Elliot and the head of marketing, laughing about brand aesthetics. Her phone buzzed. She held it up. Ooh, perfect timing. My LinkedIn post just went up. First day as director at Dynex. #stepping into legacy. She turned the screen toward Elliot. There it was, a polished photo of her sitting in my chair in my office with my mug. My chest tightened. I stepped into the elevator before they saw me. The doors closed with a soft ding. Down one floor. 2. My hands were shaking, not with rage, but with grief. I had let this place shape me, define me. I had poured my intelligence, my loyalty, my best years into its bones. And now I was leaving with no more recognition than a departing intern. Down in the lobby, I spotted someone sitting on the worn leather bench by the window. Noah. Noah was our junior sysadmin. Young, awkward, brilliant, with back-end scripts. He stood when he saw me. I just wanted to say thank you, he stammered. You were the only one who ever really taught me how this place works. I smiled gently. You're sharp. Noah, keep your code clean and don't let Emma touch the integrations. He chuckled nervously. Too late. She already asked me to remove the legacy API links. I paused, then leaned closer. Do not delete anything. Just rename the folders. Trust me. His eyes widened. He nodded fast. Got it. Hidden, not gone. I squeezed his shoulder. Good man. And then I left. No parade, no claps. Just the quiet click of the front doors as I walked into sunlight. I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that in silence, but as I reached my car, I opened. LinkedIn found her post and read the comments. "So proud of you, Emma. A true leader in the making. What a brilliant move by Dynex." And then buried 20 comments down. I saw one from an old vendor we'd worked with for years. "Congratulations, Emma. Big shoes to fill." Abigail set the gold standard. That one stayed with me. I didn't like that it hurt, but it did, because the only applause I got came from a stranger with a good memory and no stake in this game. I shut the app. And then, for the first time in weeks, I let myself whisper something I hadn't said out loud. They didn't deserve me. It had been exactly 21 days since I walked out of Dynex. I hadn't touched my work email since I'd deleted the app, archived the folders, even tossed the old badge into the back of a drawer. I was trying, really trying to let go. I'd picked up a few consulting gigs. Nothing major, just enough to keep my hands busy. My days were quieter, my inbox mercifully calmer. I thought maybe I'd found some peace. Then the phone rang, unknown number 646 area code. I almost didn't pick up. "Hello." A pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. "Abigail. This is Lisa from Halstead Group. Sorry to call you like this. We've got a problem." I stood a little straighter. "I don't work at Dynex anymore." "Lisa." "I know," she said quickly. I figured, but I didn't know who else to call. "Did you approve the deletion of our records?" I blinked. "Excuse me, our entire history with Dynex gone. Notes, invoices, configurations, contract trails, all of it. We logged in to upload new documents yesterday, and the portal was empty. Just empty." My mouth went dry. "I'm sorry," I said, already knowing what happened, but I had nothing to do with that. Lisa hesitated. "So, it wasn't you who authorized the cleanup last week?" I felt the bitterness bloom like heat behind my eyes. "No, Lisa. I haven't worked there for 3 weeks. If someone deleted your files, it wasn't under my watch." There was a pause on the line, just long enough to sting. "Right, I assumed. I just had to check." I nodded to no one. "I understand." And then I said it, the line I'd been waiting for without realizing. "I don't work there anymore." I ended the call. I sat down on the edge of my couch, the phone still in my hand. The air felt thick, my chest tight, but not from panic, from realization they'd done exactly what I warned them not to do. They let Emma play with matches in a warehouse full of gasoline. 10 minutes later, I got a text from Clara. One line. "Did you hear Emma wiped 4,000 plus client files trying to streamline the back end? No backups." I let out a laugh so dry it hurt. In her defense, she probably thought she was cleaning up clutter. She'd talked a lot about decluttering the system and starting fresh. I had assumed she meant aesthetics, colors, labels, maybe folder names. Apparently, she meant wholesale erasure. I opened LinkedIn on impulse. Elliot hadn't posted in over a week. But the comments under Emma's first day as director post had shifted tone. "Can someone from Dynex contact us? We've lost all our project files. Not the leadership we were promised. Terrible onboarding experience. Thinking of pulling our contract." There was even one from an old client of mine, Charles Wu, "Bring Abigail back or prepare for fallout." We trusted her. The bitter irony. They had let me walk out in silence. Now the silence was coming back to scream. Later that evening, I ran into Noah at a networking mixer hosted by a mutual contact. He looked pale. She didn't even ask it before doing it," he said. "She just clicked, select all, and purged the archive folders. Said they were full of old, irrelevant data. She didn't even know we had separate client indexes stored there. Did she tell Elliot?" "She told him after the client calls started. He looked like he'd swallowed glass." I almost felt bad for him, almost. But then I remembered that blue coffee mug. My mug still sitting on her desk like a joke. No, I didn't feel bad. They handed her the keys and she drove the car straight off the cliff. I took a long sip of my drink and looked Noah in the eye. Whatever happens next, I said, just remember, I tried to warn them. By Monday morning, the silence at Dynex had turned into something louder than any siren. Clara texted me again. This time it wasn't a warning, it was a confession. They've lost 6 major contracts since Friday. 2 clients are threatening legal action. Emma's blaming it. I almost felt bad for Noah. Almost. But I knew he'd do the right thing. Later that afternoon, I got a secure message from him. She tried to throw the dev team under the bus. Said we didn't warn her about the archive structure. I showed Elliot the Slack thread from 2 weeks ago where I told her exactly what not to delete. He went pale. He attached a screenshot of Emma's Slack message. Don't need all that old data noise purging now. Cleaner workspace, cleaner results. The emoji. The nails. The sparkle. It was all too perfect. I didn't reply. I just leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee slowly. The same brand I used to stock in the office pantry. By Wednesday, my LinkedIn inbox was full. Former colleagues, vendors, even past clients were reaching out. Some were checking in. Others were fishing for behind-the-scenes gossip. But most, they were asking if I was available. One message stood out from Frances, our former head of partnerships. She'd left Dynex 2 years ago quietly after a leadership clash with Elliot. We hadn't spoken much since. Her message was simple. I see the storms finally hit coffee. Soon, I smiled, typed back, you pick the time. Meanwhile, word had spread that Emma was being temporarily reassigned. The language was corporate speak for, we need to clean this mess and save face. Clara filled me in over lunch at a quiet cafe near my apartment. She cried in the boardroom. Abby, she said, stirring her tea with a kind of second-hand embarrassment. Real tears. Said she didn't know it was that serious. I raised an eyebrow. She deleted 10 years of client history and thought it was decluttering. She said it was a reset move, like rebranding a wardrobe. I almost choked on my sandwich. She treated institutional memory like it was an old pair of shoes. Clara nodded. Elliot looked like he aged 10 years in that meeting. I said nothing. I didn't need to, because the truth was, this was exactly what I had warned them about. Elliot had chosen branding over backbone aesthetics, over architecture, his daughter over the woman who kept the walls from cracking. And now the walls were crumbling. One of our oldest clients, Halstead Group, had issued a formal complaint. Charles Wu, the CEO, had written a scathing review on a tech industry platform. Abigail kept our systems running for a decade. She's gone, and so is our trust in Dynex. It was getting shared. Emma's LinkedIn was now locked. Elliot's page hadn't updated in over a week. And Dynex's official account was issuing vague PR responses, promising a transition into a more transparent operational phase. Whatever that meant, I didn't laugh. Not out loud, but I felt something inside me settle. Not joy. Not revenge. Something quieter. Like balance. I was pouring my second cup of coffee when an email arrived from someone I hadn't heard from in years. Ravi Patel, a partner at one of our early angel investor firms. He'd been low-key, always in the background, but sharp. He'd called me the best insurance policy Dynex had. His message was short. Heard you're free. Let's talk about building something better. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then closed my laptop. No rush. Let the pieces fall where they may. Let them scramble. Let them explain how the woman they erased turned out to be the foundation holding it all together. Because I wasn't angry anymore, I wasn't hurt, I was just done. And for the first time in years, that felt like power. The invitation subject line was bold and urgent. All staff emergency town hall, attendance mandatory. The body of the email was vague, no agenda, no speakers listed, just a time and a Zoom link. Wednesday at 10:00 a.m. Clara forwarded it to me with one word. Popcorn. I didn't reply, but I made sure my schedule was clear. By 10:03, 43 people had joined the call, a few cameras on most off faces, flat eyes wary. The chat was silent. Even the newer hires people who barely knew what had happened could sense something was wrong. Emma's square appeared at 10:07. She looked different. The usual polished makeup was gone, her hair was pulled back hastily, and her background wasn't her minimalist office. It was a neutral wall like a spare bedroom or a parent's home. Her face was pale, her lips pressed tight. Behind the blank stare was a woman unraveling. She started with a prepared script. I could hear the paper crinkle as her hand trembled. I want to acknowledge the recent challenges we've faced as a team. She didn't get far, because 5 minutes into her speech, Gregory, our head of compliance, unmuted himself. Emma, he said, calm but clipped. Can you explain why the Halstead contract file, along with its renewal trail, was permanently deleted from the primary system and the offsite archive? Emma froze. I've been working with IT to figure that out, she said quickly. There must have been a syncing issue, or maybe the backup system didn't. No, Gregory interrupted, his voice louder. We checked. You requested deletion from both locations, manually silence. Emma's eyes widened, her lips parted like she wanted to say something, anything, but no words came. Then her voice cracked. I didn't know it was that important, she whispered, and just like that the dam broke. Her shoulders sank, her mouth twisted, and in front of 43 employees, some shocked, some expressionless, Emma started to cry. Not graceful, single tear crying, not Hollywood crying, red-faced, gasping, ugly crying. I just wanted to fix the system, she sobbed. Everything was so messy, I thought I was helping. I didn't mean for this to happen. Someone muted her, no one knows who. But the silence that followed was heavier than the breakdown. Then, from one of the lower squares, a familiar voice spoke. If Abigail were still here, none of this would have happened. It was Mark Feldman, senior project manager, been at Dynex nearly as long as I had, always quiet, always neutral. But now, he was done pretending. No one replied. No one had to. The line hung there like a slap. I found out later that the moment Mark's voice, Emma's breakdown, was clipped and shared internally, it spread fast. By lunchtime, someone had posted it to a private Slack channel, what really happened. By evening, the video had leaked outside. It landed on a mid-tier tech news blog, then it hit Reddit, then Twitter. And just like that, the truth wasn't just internal anymore, it was everywhere. Clients started calling. Former employees chimed in. Even interns from years ago posted stories like, Abigail trained me in 2016, she's the only reason I stuck it out. People started comparing LinkedIn profiles. Mine and Emma's one comment said, they replaced a foundation with a hashtag. By Thursday, Elliot still hadn't made a public appearance, no email, no statement. Rumors said he'd flown to Lake Tahoe for a strategic break, but we all knew better. He'd disappeared and left his daughter to drown. And the irony, the only person who could have kept the company afloat was the one they let drift away. It started as a single tweet, posted by a freelance consultant I barely remembered working with, someone named Jordan Lee, who once shadowed a product rollout I led in Chicago. He'd followed me back then, not because I asked, but because I showed up on time, knew what I was doing, and treated the intern like he mattered. His tweet was simple, almost cruel in its precision. They fired the expert, hired the CEO's daughter. Now they're both gone. But Abigail, she's being called by everyone. By noon, it had 12,000 retweets. By evening, over 60,000. By Friday, it was viral. People started replying with stories. Former clients, junior staff, partners from other firms. They used my name like a password. Abigail was the only one who knew our onboarding structure. She flew across the country to fix a failed demo with 24 hours notice. She once stayed up until 2 a.m., helping me reformat an API integration for a team I didn't even work in. The hashtag #BringBack. Abigail began trending in a niche corner of business Twitter. I hadn't posted anything. I hadn't said a word. But my name was everywhere. Even my old email address, the one routed to my personal Gmail after I left. Dynex started pinging like a pinball machine. By the end of the day, I had 42 job offers sitting in my inbox. Not interviews. Offers. 6 consulting gigs. 4 executive positions. A firm in Berlin offered to fly me out first class. No questions asked. 2 separate VCs asked if I'd be interested in co-founding a new SaaS platform focused on client relationship optimization. And one message was from Charles Wu, the CEO of Halstead Group, the same man whose contract Emma had accidentally erased. His email read, "Abigail, we always said you were the only one who actually understood what made partnerships work. I don't want to talk about what happened at Dynex, I want to talk about what comes next. Let's build something better." Charles Furr didn't respond. Not right away. I closed my laptop and took a walk around the block. My phone kept buzzing. Notifications, mentions, direct messages. Some of them made me laugh. Someone had edited my face onto Rosie the Riveter with the caption, "Abigail can fix it." Another posted a meme, Emma with a burning server room behind her, and me photoshopped into a calm, tea-sipping pose labeled, "Abigail warned you." The vindication should have felt sweeter. Maybe to someone else it would have. But for me it felt quieter, like breath returning after you didn't realize you'd been holding it for too long. That night I met Clara and Noah at a rooftop bar downtown. The air was crisp, the kind that wakes you up without slapping you. They both hugged me like we'd survived a war together. "Did you see the Reddit thread?" Clara asked, grinning. "Some guy posted that you were the soul of Dynex, and the top comment said, 'The soul they sold for nepotism.'" Brutal Noah sipped his drink. Elliot's, "LinkedIn is still dark." Emma locked her profile. "They're ghosts now." I nodded. "They'll reemerge eventually. People like them always do. Rebrand, pivot, rewrite the story." "But not this time," Clara said. "You are the story." I didn't say much after that. I didn't need to. The truth was out now, and I didn't have to lift a finger to force it. It found its own way. As we watched the city lights shimmer beneath us, Noah leaned toward me. "Do you think you'll go back?" he asked. "To the same industry? I mean, I thought about it for a moment." "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe I'll build something new. Maybe I'll help others do it right this time, without the noise, without the masks." Clara raised her glass. "To doing it your way." I raised mine. "To finally being seen." The first lawsuit was quiet, a formal letter from a mid-tier logistics client in Denver citing breach of data responsibility and contractual negligence. It might have been swept under the rug if it hadn't been followed within 24 hours by 2 more. By the end of the week, 5 companies had filed legal action against Dynex. Clara called me that Friday night. "Did you see the filings?" she asked, voice hushed but trembling with disbelief. "It's worse than we thought. Halstead is going public with their complaint. They've got screenshots, contracts, even internal memos. I was already reading the headline on a business news blog. Halstead Group accuses Dynex of gross negligence after leadership. Shakeup below it." We asked for Abigail. We got silence. Charles Wu, CEO of Halstead Group. The article quoted another client who remained anonymous. They removed the one person who held it all together. "Now they're unraveling." I didn't smile, but I did breathe. Elliot, once a regular speaker at tech conferences and entrepreneurship panels, was now nowhere to be found. His personal website had gone offline. His LinkedIn still hadn't updated since Emma's promotion. The industry started whispering words like exit deal, gone bad, and founder cover-up. And Emma. She'd been pulled from all internal rosters, her director title scrubbed. Rumor had it she was holed up in her parents' summer house on Bainbridge Island. A junior marketing associate leaked a message Emma had sent internally just before her disappearance. "I did my best. I thought we needed a new image. Everyone was against me from day one." The response. Brutal Gregory from compliance reportedly replied, "Leadership isn't a filter, it's responsibility." Dynex's board scrambled to save what was left. They issued a press release. "We are undergoing a strategic restructuring and are committed to restoring our clients' trust." But it was too late. Clients were leaving one after another, like a silent evacuation. The company's stock price dropped 70% in a single week. Investor calls were flooded with demands. Partners began pulling funding. Internal teams were asked to reapply for their own jobs. And in the middle of it all, someone resurfaced an old video of me speaking at a 2019 leadership summit. My panel was about operational resilience in fast-growing companies. The irony was thick enough to slice. I watched the video for the first time in years. There I was. Clean blazer, calm voice, talking about the importance of institutional memory and structured systems. "We don't realize how fragile a company's foundation is," I'd said back then, "until the one person who understands it quietly disappears." People started sharing the clip again, tagging it with phrases like #Abigail was right, #listen to your backbone, #Dynexit. Even The Verge ran a piece titled, "When Nepotism Kills a Startup, The Fall of Dynex." The article ended with a chilling line in replacing wisdom with legacy. Dynex didn't just lose a director, they lost their future. On Sunday, I got a call from Frances, the former head of partnerships, who'd reached out the week before. "They're trying to sell the client list," she said, quietly, "to cover legal fees." I sat up straighter. "You're sure one of the board members contacted me? They're desperate. I didn't say anything." Then she added, "A few of us are thinking of starting something new, with real structure, real leadership. You don't have to say yes, but if you were in, the rest would follow." For the first time, I didn't feel unsure. I'm listening, because while Dynex burned, something else was forming quietly, deliberately. This time built not on buzzwords and branding, but on actual competence. And somewhere inside me, that part that once felt shattered was starting to feel whole again. On Monday morning, I passed by the old Dynex building on my way to a meeting downtown. The lobby was empty. The company's logo was still there, but one of the letters in the acrylic sign had fallen off. It dangled sideways, held by nothing but fading glue. I stopped and stared, not out of sentiment, but because it looked exactly like what the company had become. The new office wasn't grand. No corner windows, no smart glass walls or polished floors. Just a modest space with good light, a standing desk, and a potted snake plant. I named Grace, but it was mine, and more importantly, it was quiet. No chaos, no urgent slack, pings about branding pivots, no egos stomping around in expensive heels. Just real work with real people who listened. I'd accepted a role as strategic advisor at Delcroft Analytics, a former competitor of Dynex, that had always stayed just behind us until now. They weren't flashy, but they were steady, disciplined, grounded. It was Frances who pulled me in. She had left Dynex long before the implosion and joined Delcroft as their director of partnerships. When the dust settled, she reached out. "We want to rebuild the right way," she said, "and I don't want to do it without you." Now, 3 weeks into the job, my days were filled with rebuilding not just systems but trust. Processes that didn't require duct tape, cultures that didn't rely on worshipping founders, and most satisfying of all, clients were following me. That afternoon, I walked into a video call with Bennett & Co., a logistics firm I'd supported for over a decade. They'd been loyal to Dynex until Emma deleted their renewal database. Their CEO, Marcia Bennett, appeared on screen, a stern-faced woman in her 50s with a coffee mug that read, "Respect is earned." The moment she saw me, her expression softened. "Abigail," she said, "I was hoping it was really you." "It's really me," I smiled. "And I'm with Delcroft now." She nodded. "Well then, I suppose that answers our next question. We're moving everything to you. Not the company you. The Delcroft team, Francis, a junior strategist named Eli, and the CEO, Rajiv, sat in quiet awe. They didn't celebrate. They just took notes. Professional, prepared. After the call, Eli turned to me, eyes wide. She just handed us a $4 million contract. Francis grinned. "Told you she was a legend." I laughed softly. "I'm not a legend. I just didn't forget what mattered." That night, I stayed behind for a bit. I opened my laptop and scanned the dashboard. 4 new contracts signed, 2 more pending. Every one of them had followed me from Dynex. Not because I asked, but because they remembered. As I leaned back in my chair, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "You were always the real backbone. I see that now." "I'm sorry, Elliot." I stared at it for a moment, then locked the screen. I didn't need his apology, not anymore, because in the end, I hadn't needed to burn bridges, I hadn't needed revenge, I just walked away. And now, they were the ones looking back. I was already gone. The morning light filtered gently through the blinds of my new office. Outside, the trees had just started to blush with the early signs of autumn gold at the tips, crimson creeping along the edges. It was quiet, not empty, not dull, just peaceful. I opened the small leather notebook I'd carried for years, the same one I used during my time at Dynex meeting notes. System maps, vendor numbers scribbled in shorthand. No one else could read. Most pages were filled, except for one. The final one. Blank. Waiting. I picked up my pen, hesitated a beat, and wrote, "I didn't burn the bridge. I just stepped off it." They lit the fire themselves. I stared at the words, letting them settle. This wasn't vengeance, this was truth. They thought silence was submission, but really it was the sound of a match being struck by their own hand. That afternoon, I joined a strategy roundtable with Francis, Rajiv, and a few new hires at Delcroft. One of them, Talia, a bright analyst fresh from grad school, asked an honest question as we discussed rebuilding long-term client systems. How do you stop people from making the same mistakes again when the people in charge don't listen? Everyone turned to me. I looked at her. Really looked. She reminded me of myself, years ago, sharp, eager, just trying to do the right thing without getting run over. I leaned forward. "You don't stop them," I said. "You make sure the right people are in the room from the start. And when they don't listen, document everything, then walk." She blinked. "Just like that." I smiled softly. "Just like that." Later that evening, Clara called. She was laughing, an exhausted, vindicated kind of laugh. "Guess who's doing a leadership podcast now?" she said. "Don't tell me I said already, knowing Emma. Lessons from the Ashes, what crisis taught me about leadership." I leaned back in my chair. Catchy. She's got 1 episode, 3 sponsors, and 0 self-awareness. I chuckled. Let her talk why. Because sometimes people hang themselves faster with a microphone than a noose. Clara sighed. "You're scary when you're zen." "I'm not scary," I said. "I'm finally untied." That weekend, I cleaned out a drawer in my apartment, found the old Dynex ID badge I'd never bothered throwing away. I held it in my hand for a moment. My photo stared back. Tired eyes. Tight. Smile. Name printed clean beneath the logo that had once meant everything. Without thinking, I walked to the balcony and let the wind take it. I didn't need to burn it. Let time do the rest. The following Monday, I received a letter in the mail. Thick envelope, gold foil on the flap. It was from a National Business Leadership Foundation. They'd nominated me for their annual Quiet Excellence Award, a recognition for those who'd shaped industries without needing spotlight. At the bottom of the letter was a handwritten note. "We heard your name whispered in every room we entered. That's power, real power." I didn't cry, not because I wasn't moved, but because the recognition didn't define me, it simply reflected me. In my last entry that night, I wrote, "Revenge is noisy, integrity is silent, and time remembers the difference." I closed the notebook, walked to the window, breathed in a new season. No smoke behind me, just air.